You're in the room for adopting a Drupal Contrib-First Approach. This is an icebreaker, and I usually like to use this slide just to ask the audience some questions about who they are. How many people here are who do not work for a Drupal service provider? You're maybe a consumer of Drupal. You're an end user. Anyone here falls in that category? Great. How many people here would consider have contributed to Drupal in some way? Awesome. Most people here. And how many people here have contributed to Drupal in some way while working on portfolio work? Oh, a lot of people. Fantastic. So maybe some of this is going to be, hopefully some of this will be news to some of those people there. So here we are today. I'm Jason Want. I work for Nerdery. I'm a senior software engineer. I've been working with Drupal for about 10 years now in various capacities, currently as technical lead on projects. This is a new vision statement for the Nerdery that I'm pretty excited about, and I just wanted to share it. Relentlessly invent a world that works better for all. Just showing now, we just adopted it here in the last month. Nerdery is a digital consulting offering, specializing in platform modernization, IoT services, and collaboration to build your product and team. So just a plug for my employer and my sponsor here. We're going to talk about a few things. We're going to talk about what it is, and how do you do it, a little bit about how you do it, how you can do it, and then the benefits of this approach, and then just a short checklist here so you can take something away. In the deck you'll see some images that I've snapped up from New Orleans. I'm from New Orleans, and so they're not super relative to the content. They may just fit the orientation of that slide, and I've used them there. All right, so here's sort of my working definition that I've put together for the Nerdery internally, and it's essentially building on the Drupal community's values, principles, and development practices, those existing things, and then using that with our community members and not yet members. That's a key aspect here, that you're working with new members, bringing people into the community through this approach. And then the end game here is just delivering really good Drupal solutions for those consumers of Drupal. This is a bit of it. I'm going to start off with Drupal values and principles. I don't know if everyone is familiar with those. It's sort of a process I've been becoming more familiar with them. And this is a quote here from Dries, and that reflects on the community, and we're going to just take a minute to read that if you want. And then we'll go into those Drupal community values and principles. And everyone who's familiar with them, raise your hand. Right? I don't have them memorized myself, so we're just going to quickly go over them. So prioritizing impact. I think in that comes, there's sort of two principles associated with that value, where the work that we're doing gives purpose, and you're prioritizing the impact on people that are going to be using Drupal and our solutions that we build, and that we're making them the best way we can so that it's accessible to a lot of people. Better together. This is a great one. This is really about the collaboration. We're fostering an environment, so bringing people in, like as I mentioned, and then when we're making decisions as agencies, we're doing it in a collaborative way, encouraging others to get involved. Everyone's here at a camp. You're already getting involved. That's great. And then taking this value and this principle, leading that. So working with other people that you're interacting with to help them understand and appreciate the community and the platform. And then striving for excellence. We embrace the change, that we're always iterating, we're always evolving, we're always changing Drupal. As we went from 7 to 8, that was a big change, but that's part of what makes the community really strong. And then here, kind of building on what the keynote was about, treating each other with dignity and respect, and those principles there. One of the key things that I like to remind myself of is seek, first to understand and then be understood. And I always have to remind myself when I'm doing code reviews in the PR process, when I'm making a comment, what was happening here before I make a comment. And then last, enjoy what you do. Make sure you're having fun when you're doing it. And all those together kind of are the foundation of a Drupal Contrib-First approach, in my mind. And so let's talk about a little bit how you do it. There's sort of three kind of broad topics that I like to work with there. Engage the community. These are things that we're already doing. You're already here. You're participating in the camp. A lot of you already contributed to Drupal, and other things like that. And then we're partnering with consumers. Those are the clients, the end users. I'm on the fence about that term consumer. I was looking for a word there that captured everybody. And then adopting this approach within your practice, in your day-to-day work. And we'll talk about a little bit more about that in detail. So these things I think we're all probably very familiar with in working with the Drupal community. You're engaging online, offline at events, and in the issue queues. If you are contributing, you're participating. A lot of the discussions happen in the issue queues. And then, just the last, get involved in some way. Then here's something that maybe somewhat new, but a lot of you are already contributing during your portfolio work. So one section here about working with our clients and our consumers is that you provide them an onboarding path to the community. In my previous engagements, we are the practitioners. We bring our expertise, and sort of we work. In the past, I worked behind this curtain, right, where I'm familiar with the Drupal landscape and those things. And I come to the table with those information, and then like for security releases, I then communicate to the client or the consumer that there are security releases and things like that. But an onboarding process will take that approach, and in your initial engagement, you're onboarding those individuals and that organization to the community. Maybe you help them create that profile on Drupal.org, and then you educate them about the attribution system on Drupal.org, so then they can receive those contribution credits through their organizational profile. And you take that, you don't stop there, you continually invest in their knowledge of Drupal. So during all your sort of touch points, if you're doing Agile and all your Scrum ceremonies, you're just continually bringing up what's going on with the community and sharing that knowledge with them, so that you're investing in their knowledge and their stake in the product that they're investing in. And communicate, we're like it's sort of investing, but also just ongoing communication. This sort of just remind ourselves that we're ongoing, we're sharing that knowledge back with them, getting them more involved in the community. But then if you are attributing work to that organization, you want to share that. Sometimes they're so busy, we're all so busy, that they may not be realizing what you are doing. And so you can share that information back to them periodically, just so that they can then share that more broadly within their organization. And I think this one, collaborate, this is really at the heart of, if you look back at the Drupal community values and principles, you see them sort of echo in these things here, but collaborate is at the heart of it, where when you are engaging with a client and you're looking at all the possible solutions out there, that you're helping them evaluate them and make the decision on where they're going to invest in their solution, and so that you can bring the most value back to them. If you're engaged with the community and you know the roadmap of Drupal core or a specific contrib module, if you're following issues in those projects, you can relay that information back to the client and help them make the best decision on how they're going to invest in their solution, so that if you know that something is there's a patch that's going to provide some functionality for them, and it needs a little bit more effort, you can help communicate that back to them, and then plan a timeline and a roadmap when they're going to adopt that feature and things like that. And then another example would be if let me slide over into this next section here about adopting that approach in your practice. Again, sort of what I was just discussing about how if you're using Agile and you can help prioritize the exact sort of work that the project is going to be completing in a sprint or a future sprint, you can help the client evaluate what's important today versus maybe something that's going to be more important later on when the next minor point release for Drupal is going to be out there. So they can refocus their energy on a feature or a set of features that is going to become available later, but they can focus on something now. And so you're constantly just evaluating through an agile approach what's most valuable for that particular project. So another thing here in the discovery process, when we engage with our partners and our clients, and we understand what their needs are, you can go out and you research, right? We go out and see what's available in core or in contrib space that's going to satisfy their requirements. And you might find a solution that satisfies 80% of those requirements, and you can go back and communicate that to the product owner of that project and just help them understand that, well, if we wanted to satisfy all of the requirements, we can then put that into a future sprint. And then at that point, even maybe go ahead and create a feature request within that project and help collaborate directly with the maintainer of that module, so that you're putting yourself and the project and the product owner on a roadmap where you're going to then develop and contribute that solution in line with what the maintainer would like to see happen for that feature. So then at that same time, you're collaborating with the community and you're bringing that partner and that client in to help plan that out. And that can go directly into your scope of work document. Part of the development practice, when you're looking at those solutions, kind of the example I just said, you're looking at the contrib space, you're evaluating what can be achieved through core or a contrib or a custom solution. And I'll go through an exercise where you can help decide on using a decision matrix to evaluate those possible solutions, and then giving that information and going through this exercise with your partners and your clients to help determine what's going to be the best fit for their time, their budget, but also any other factors that they've determined. I don't know if anyone's familiar with this. This is on Drupal.org. This is sort of the preferred development approach. It's more nuanced, and you can look this up on Drupal.org itself. You're looking at what you can achieve with Drupal core through configuration, using the views module, or extending existing modules through the API, using a contrib module, and etc. And then extending that contrib module. Maybe there's hooks available. If there's not a hook available in a contrib module, you could then provide a patch that implements a hook, so then you can extend an existing solution. And then last year you're really looking at writing custom code. And there's kind of really another step here where maybe you can contrib after the fact, that if you write a custom solution, then later you can revisit that solution and then contribute back to the community after it. So this is an exercise you can go through with your partners, with your development team, or with the client to you identify factors when selecting a solution, and I put this in here because it's very nuanced when you're trying to research the best solution, and as a Drupal provider you want to contribute everything, but there's always the limiting factors of time and money, as always with client projects. But if there are competing solutions within your development team, if you got a quick solution that you can just do it in the presentation layer in your templates, or something more robust, you can help identify those factors for that particular project with your client. For example, do they need feature parity? So they have a business requirement, they have a list of features. Do they need all of them? Help them prioritize that. And then how long will it implement? That's really the time and money. What are their driving factors? Are there hard deadlines involved with that? For compatibility, maintainability, and extensibility, those are sort of broad topics that when using a Contrib-First approach, it's something that we have an eye for, because some of these projects, they have a life cycle that could be 5-10 years. I was recently involved in an engagement where I asked the client directly what, they had a life cycle for this platform, because I was wondering, do they have a set sort of, are they depreciating this sort of asset over a 10-year period where they know they're going to have to reinvent and do it again? And they didn't have a timeline at all. I was kind of surprised, but they said, we're going to use this until it doesn't work for us anymore, right? So given that timeline, these other things may weigh more. So you go through this exercise, you determine the factors, whether or not these are the exact factors that work for your particular situation. And then you go through an exercise where you provide weights to these factors. So then you let the client decide what is the most important to them for this particular sort of requirement or feature set that they're attaining. And so then you come up with different solutions, and then you provide your weights. So then you score them, and then essentially you multiply your score by your factor, and then you get totals, and then you just take that information back, and that kind of help lead a decision-making process with your clients, so that I feel, I'm trying to work with the best interest of the product owner and the client, and so, but I am also want to do contrib work, and so I just want to make sure that they have that information and they're making the decision that's going to be best for them, and this is an exercise that will help do that. All right, so the benefits of a contrib-first approach. I sort of broke this down into different audiences. The consumer is the end user, the client here, and then individuals and providers. We can talk about the consumer here. There's two sort of broad topics that I like to talk about. Is the increasing the value that we deliver in our engagements by doing a contrib-first approach, especially when you consider factors like maintainability, extensibility, and other things that go that wasn't listed on there. Security. When you're providing a contrib-first approach, you're really working to provide the best solution for the long term, and that's where the value comes in. And then there's broad, you increase your impact, the quality, secure solutions, and those kind of tie back to those factors. So just talking a little bit about these items. When you do if you're able to fulfill a feature requirement with a contrib solution, whether it's extending an existing contrib solution with a new feature and providing a patch for that, you're working with a maintainer that gets committed to that project, then your impact for the consumer is that if you're an organization that has multiple web properties, or you have partners that you work with through a parent organization, that functionality will be there and available very quickly for other people to use. So the impact is just, it's magnified there. The quality, as we participate directly within the community, we become exposed to, Drupal APIs. We've worked with people in the community; they become our mentors, and our as developers and practitioners, our product becomes better, which the consumer benefits from because they're getting a better solution at the end. And then secure solutions. We know recently with the adoption of the JSON API module in the Drupal core and the bug bounty program that was also kicked off a while ago, and hence all the security releases recently, is that as you make that code, if you're not writing custom code that never sees the light of day, you're contributing it gets more visible, and you end up with better and more secure solutions there. Forward compatibility and increased extensibility. So those kind of go hand in hand, so that when you're considering feature requirements and you do your research and you look at what's available and you provide a plan, you're considering the roadmap of Drupal, and you're looking to ensure that the work you're doing will be forward compatible with any sort of future releases of Drupal. There's two examples that come to mind for me with that is when you're doing theme work and you're using sort of custom markup, and you don't use that. I don't know if you're familiar with the attributes in a template. If you're not printing those, then then you're losing, possibly contextual links or additional features like that. So making sure your work is going to support any sort of feature that Drupal may add, because Drupal can expose and let anything inject things into the attributes of a field wrapper or the entity wrapper when it gets rendered. And so making sure that that work is in line with whatever that may come down the line. Another example would be handling cache tags. A lot of times when maybe a timeline is tight and there's some sort of logic going on in template files, and we're just taking values from fields, thank you, and we're just printing those in our custom markup, and we never let Drupal render the render array in our template, so those cache tags don't bubble up, and then our customers are like, well, when I make this change here, it's not invalidating. I have to go clear the cache, but then I have varnish in front, so I have to ask my technical manager to go clear varnish cache so we can confirm our change has been made before we let the brand review the changes or something like this. So when we plan our work, and the more closely we work with Drupal, we'll know about those things and we'll be forward compatible with changes that Drupal may make. And then extensibility. If you're using APIs and you're providing maybe hooks, or now you're providing event dispatching and subscribing, you let other people tap into your work so you can extend it further. And so increasing the value delivered goes hand in hand with lowering the cost of ownership. I know some of this work is actually quite expensive to do, but again, if you're looking at my example where I'm asking the client, what is your timeline over a 10-year period, if they can save on maintenance and other sort of redos because it was contributed, it was done with a more thoughtful, collaborative way on the outset, then you'll end up with better maintainability and lower costs in the future. And then also, if you are making it extensible and forward compatible, then when the requirements change, which they do often, you can quickly pivot, so then you don't have to undo a lot of work or just throw away work that was done, but you can quickly pivot. So here, I mentioned in the discovery process, when you're surveying, what are the solutions available. If you can take something off the shelf in the contrib space instead of doing a custom solution, you're going to be lowering the cost immediately by doing that. And then also, as practitioners, and we're involved more closely with the Drupal community, and we become more familiar with, the Drupal way of doing things. That you're letting Drupal bubble up those cache tags so you get invalidation. You're printing those attributes, so things that can hook in and change they can add information to the render array. Or another example here is when working with the front end. Let me just pull it out. Who's familiar with Drupal behaviors? Who's had a nightmare debugging things with Drupal behaviors when you first learned? So through that experience, when you're working on a project and you're onboarding a new developer, a front-end engineer who may not be that familiar with Drupal, and they're writing JavaScript, and you're pointing out, well, we should use Drupal behaviors here and jQuery once plugin, so that it's going to be compatible with other things that are happening in the Drupal space, and so you don't have to redo those things later on, which costs money. And of course, these are kind of hand in hand with the increased value, reusability. You get to reuse things, but then it's lowering the cost of future projects. As I mentioned, if you're working with an engagement and they have, sister companies or partners that can reuse some of that functionality, you're lowering the cost of future projects. And then the reduced overhead of just maintenance. If you're doing things in a Contrib-First approach, you're getting feedback from the community, your things are becoming more polished, and there'll be reduced overhead in maintaining those items. And then for individuals, this is, in my position as technical lead, Thank you. I find doing this approach is really, it brings me a lot of fulfillment because I'm able to try to contribute when I am on a project in this fashion. And then also it helps me grow professionally. As I engage the community, I become a better developer through that. And so, see, these are some of the things that attribute to that, that professional growth and that fulfillment. And then for providers, I think this is just, what benefits others is going to benefit the providers in the agency. If you're focusing on the success of your partners and you're focusing on the success of your team members, that your agency is going to do well. And one thing I'll talk about here with the increased, brand equity and awareness, and when you engage with the Drupal space and you're contributing to projects on Drupal.org, you have that marketplace where sort of it ranks the agencies that are involved in Drupal.org in a way that it sorts them on their contribution efforts. That's case studies, but also code and other things. And then through that, you get exposure, you get possible lead generation opportunities, and then the other three things here are going to help your team members level up and be more satisfied with their job and help with recruitment. And so these are things that you can do. You can take the material in this and adopt it to your own sort of workplace. Build consensus with your team about how you're going to do this. And that's just not your development team, that's your sales and marketing. Everyone in the organization can be on board with this approach because I think it becomes a marketing advantage as well. So then you document that, you put together your onboarding materials for your clients, but then also your team members so they can get onboarded with the approach all the way through. And then of course you just iterate on that. You're constantly making improvements there. And again, this is the working definition here at the end. So thanks for your time. Does anyone have any questions? Great.
It's not really a question, it's more of a comment. What I found is that when you talk about making sure that you're outputting the Drupal attributes and making sure that it's all there, things I've found like textual links don't work, JavaScript errors for quick edit not appearing, or they are appearing actually. Stuff like that. We just try to do code reviews before anything really gets pushed live, and so we do a lot of pair programming, and so I find it all the time. It happens, and so if you are doing a Contrib-First approach, it really helps not only your developers, but it helps the client, and then if you release it, it helps the community. So.
Right on. Yeah. Just to repeat for the recording that a comment was made about if you're doing this approach, you can catch these things in peer review, code review, but then also those people that you're learning through that process, and then if you're contributing, it's going to be better for the community with those contrib solutions. Any other questions? If no other questions, please give me feedback, mid.camp@265, and then also the contribution day on Saturday. Don't forget that.